I can put up the ISBN right now if you want. We'll also send it out by email. But the Barron's AP Computer Science A will probably be assigning practice problems out of that, and it's just good to make sure that you're keeping up with the material. We might assign related readings for each chapter. So,
Next suspicion.
this is the ISBN number, and try to get this as soon as possible, just because it'll be a good way of after you learn something in the class, you can kind of go back, read this section about it, just make sure you understood what you learned. Also, okay, well, try 6th edition. We recommend 6th edition because sometimes the problems change each year, and then it just gets confusing because you did a different homework assignment than the other kid, yeah. Okay, also, join that Facebook group because we post stuff on there. Sometimes we might not be so good about sending out emails. Also, check out the student resources folder. Does anyone not know how to get to the student resources folder? Nobody cares. Okay, so let's just go over Eclipse now. I hope that all of you downloaded it. And does anyone have any difficulties with Eclipse? Everyone's Eclipse working fine? Yeah.
I saw all the windows and I was like, that.
What windows?
Like the.
I can help you.
Wait, I'm not going to do that. And did everyone else's Eclipse get set up? And do you have like a little box over here and a toolbar up top? It'll probably look different from my buttons up top because mine are kind of weird. But okay, cool. So, who was not here last class? Who was not here for the first class? Who was not here for either class? Your Puja's broken.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so just in general, we're going to go over what Eclipse does. So Eclipse has a bunch of a crazy number of features that you're probably not going to use. But we want you to get used to it so that when you need to work on projects which will require these advanced features, you're more comfortable with the environment. So, how do you start using Eclipse? You can just right-click over here. That's what I just did. And you can hit New, Java Project. And what that does is it's kind of just like creating a folder of all the things you're going to work on in this class. And that's how you're going to use it over here. So I created a Java project and I called it ACM APCS Notes. So you can right-click on the project, and to create a new program, you right-click on it, you say New, and you create a new class. Can everyone do that? And then you kind of just type in any name. So let's name it Brian. That's a horrible name for a class, but there's nothing particular we want this one to do. So we're going to name it Brian Can Be Annoying. Does anyone have any difficulties with creating a class?
Yeah.
Okay, so can anyone tell me let's try and recreate the Hello World program. Can anyone tell me what you have to type now? Yeah.
Public static void main.
Okay.
And then parentheses, string, R's, brackets.
And square brackets. And what next?
And then enter, and then butterfly braces.
So you can do it like this. You can put the open curly brace on this line, or you can put it right there. It doesn't matter. It's personal preference. Can anyone tell me what this space is called? Yeah. So basically, for those of you who weren't here for previous classes, what a block is, it's basically a chunk of code that's enclosed within these two brackets. And okay, this is really okay. Who does not understand what a block is? Because I kind of have to go to a really long explanation if you weren't here in last class. Okay. Can someone tell me how you create a Hello World program? What do I write next? Chris?
System.outprint in parentheses.
Okay.
Hello world.
And what's the purpose of the semicolon? Yeah.
To end the statement.
Okay, so it's the equivalent of a period, like you would have a period in the English language. Now, can you tell me what's going to happen when I run this program? Yeah.
Will print hello world.
Okay, so what does print mean?
Write it.
Okay, so it will display it on what's called a console window. You're not going to have a console window on the AP Computer Science test, but basically it's this little area underneath. And if I right-click the program, and I scroll down to Run As Java Application, it will display the words Hello World. So basically what system.out.println is it's a line that says the system is outputting and it's printing Hello World. So last class we talked about variables. Can someone tell me what a variable is?
It's basically storing something for future use.
Okay, so it's storing something for future use. Now, why would you need a variable in programming? For example, if you had a program where you stored 10 test scores, and you wanted to say, calculate the median of those test scores, the mode of those test scores, average, something like that. So, yeah.
You can change the data values without messing up the whole code.
Exactly. So what he means is that you can create a variable and you kind of store a value inside that variable, and then you can use the variable names. So now, for example, if I had a program that had 10 scores, say we had 10 scores, and then what we wanted to do, we wanted to add them together. So we would system print the sum. So then I would actually have to add up all the scores, right? And then what if I wanted to calculate the average of the scores? To calculate the average of all of them, within the parentheses, I would have to, again, write out all the scores, and then divide it by the number of scores, right? So, I'm not writing out the entire print statement, but the point of this is that the bad thing about this is that it's redundant. You're using those same terms, you're writing them out again. So what you would do, the point of a variable, like he said, is you store it for future use. So can someone tell me what kind of variable I would use to store these numbers? Chani.
Integer.
Okay, so how would I declare an integer? Let's start doing that. How would I declare an integer?
You type int,
Okay.
and then space, and then you name it like whatever you want. Say score 1.
Okay, does anyone know what is the most important thing about naming a variable? Yeah.
Lowercase first word, then uppercase on the other.
Okay, so, and then what would I,
Just one.
okay, so, you could do it that way, or you could do it that way. And then what next? Yeah.
And then it's an equals sign.
Okay.
And then parentheses. Oh wait, never mind. And then you just
Put the
like
score.
value.
And then you end it again with a period, like I said, so the semicolon. And can anyone tell me what this statement is called? There's a specific name for this kind of a statement. Yeah.
Declaration.
Okay, that's one name for it. So declaration could also be something like int num. So here, I'm declaring that there is now a storage space called num created in the computer. But what's different between the two? What's different between this statement and this statement? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, it hasn't assigned values. Score 1 hasn't assigned value to it, while 1 doesn't.
Exactly. So we're declaring a memory space here, and here we are putting a value in a memory space. So can anyone tell me what if I wanted to put a value into num? How would I go about doing that? Yeah,
None is equal to.
exactly. So you would do num is equal to and you would put a value. Now what's the difference between this statement and that statement? These two. Yeah.
None is being reassigned to number 2, whereas int is being declared as.
Okay, so you said num is being reassigned a value, but the thing is num never had a value, so it's not being reassigned, it's just being assigned a value for the first time. So this is a declaration, and that is an assignment. And then this is a combination of the two. So you're declaring int score1, and in the same line, you're assigning the value 1 to it. Now, what if I want to, say, just declare a bunch of ints? How would I do that? Does anyone know how to, in one statement, declare multiple ints without writing it out in a separate line over and over? So I mean, I could do int num2, int num3, but as you can see, I'm repeating int over and over, and it's kind of redundant. So, yeah.
Using array?
No, we're not going there yet. Arrays are they're later. Yeah?
Comma separated.
Okay, so comma separated. So you could, because they're all the same type, they're all ints, integers, you could just separate them by commas. And now, what's that? The red X's and the red dotted underline and Eclipse is mad. Can you tell me what that is?
Basically saying something's already assigned to that thing.
Okay, exactly. So over here, I declared int number 2, and then underneath that again, I declared another int and I called it number 2 again. So what the computer thinks I'm trying to do is it thinks I'm trying to create 2 ints but name them the same thing, which you can't do. So each int needs to have its own separate name. So then over here, we're declaring a memory space. And then over here, we're assigning a value to that memory space. So that distinction is kind of, it's good to know. So somebody said that this is a declaration statement. Can anybody tell me what the actual more correct term would be for that?
Wait, what is it for?
So somebody said it's a declaration statement, which it is, but it is also something else. Yeah,
Assignment
exactly. So, wait, say that again?
operator.
Okay, so this is an assignment statement. The assignment operator is that equals to sign over there. So there's a difference between a statement. A statement is an entire line of code that does something, and an operator is a standalone operator. So it's like a plus. You can't just put a plus in a semicolon. That doesn't do anything. So that's not a complete statement. Yeah?
Why don't you both write close to mine?
That's someone else.
Abhinav, can you help with this Eclipse? Okay, any questions about? Yeah.
Can you explain operators again? I forgot what you said. Operators like something.
Okay, so basically now, if I declare an equal to and a semicolon, I get an error because that's a statement that's not doing anything. Because an operator is something that must act on a value, on a variable, something. So there's a difference between an operator and a statement. A statement is an action. So it's like an operator is your verb, and a statement is an entire sentence. Does that make sense?
So an operator like carries out your computation.
Exactly. So like what we're doing over here, that's an operator because it's assigning a value. It's called the assignment operator because it's assigning the value to num. Can everyone see this, or should I turn the lights off? Who wants the lights off?
Is there a spinning? It's okay, keep going.
Okay. Okay, so does anyone have any questions about anything that's in this program? Variables? Yeah.
So you said you can do multiple declaration statements like your first one. Can you do multiple assignment statements?
Try it. Tell me what happens. The best way to figure stuff out in programming is to do it and see what it tells you. Yeah.
There was sort of thing of static int and int because sometimes when you try to define it inside the body,
Are you defining it? You need to define it inside of the main method.
Yeah.
We don't really go into static.
So you like that.
Oh, you're not. You have to know inside of the main method. So make sure. So what just happened to him is he put these declarations. He forgot to put them inside the main method, which, as we went over before, is what the computer jumps to the instant it starts running the program. So if you say run this program, it's going to look for that word main, and it's going to jump to it, and it's going to start running whatever's within the main method. So if you put it out there, outside the main method, that's something that we're not going to deal with this class, and it means within this class, and it means a very different thing. So just always make sure that your variables are inside the main method. And like Chris said, yes, you can do assignments within one statement, so you would be assigning multiple int values over here. But it's kind of just cleaner to do them in separate statements, just because then when you can write out, you can comment what each specific value is. Like we went over, comments is a way of explaining your code to someone who hasn't used it before. So who hasn't looked at it before and who wants to understand it. So doing stuff on separate lines would allow you to comment each variable. So just take this on lines. Okay, does anyone have any questions about comments, variables, before we move on to some relatively newer things? Okay, so let's do some. Okay, so we spoke about operators before. So like I said, an operator is something that acts on a variable. So now we have a bunch of ints. Let's just call them num2. We'll change the values here. Okay. How about we try and write a program that takes 10 students' scores on a test, percentages. So this time they're not just going to be integer values, they're going to be stuff like 28.74. Okay, that's really dismal. Nobody wants 28%. 88.74. And then create a bunch of variables and give them percentage values. And now we'll go from there. So all of you just do that right now on your computers. Just create a bunch of variables. And you can call them score 1, score 2. Okay, can anyone tell me what variable type you would use for a percentage? For a percentage. So look, I just use an int, and it's giving me an error. Can anyone tell me why it's giving me an error? Yeah, Tommy. Exactly. So a percentage is not an integer. We learned this in like third grade or whatever. But a percentage is a decimal. Does anyone remember what the decimal data type is? Yeah. Okay, so in this class, there's different data types that you can use to represent a decimal, but we only use double. So a double can store a decimal, and as you can see now, my error is gone. So just raise your hand once you're done. Or give me a thumbs up or something so I know we can move on. It's on the okay, just thumbs up once you're done. Percentages. So numbers under 100. That's it.
54.23.
17.
5.
Try to be positive. No failure.
17.99.
So we all multiply that out by
17.
2.74.
17.42. Hey, center. Cancel it. Doesn't matter.
99.
And everybody just put in the same scores so we all get the same results when we do calculations. Anything else?
74.81.
Okay.
98.1.
13.37.
98.1.
So did anyone have a problem getting all of those in? Can I give you a couple minutes to write all of those?
You could blame it on one. Yeah.
Okay, if anyone's still writing, just show of hands. No big deal. Okay, so can somebody tell me how would I calculate the average of all of these scores? Okay, yeah.
Add them all up and divide by 9.
Okay, so to do that, what do I need to use? How do you add stuff in a computer program?
Plus.
What's a plus?
You assign a new variable for average.
But what's a plus? That's my question. I just talked about this a little bit earlier during the class. Yeah.
It's an operator.
Exactly. So it's an operator because it acts on some other value. Temporarily ignoring this, but we're going to go over arithmetic operators now. Okay, what are some arithmetic operators?
Plus.
Okay,
Minus.
okay.
9.
How do you represent multiplication on a computer?
Asterisk.
Right.
Division.
How do you represent division?
Forward slash.
Okay, now I'm going to introduce a type that you don't use in your everyday math, and this is called the modulus operator. Can anyone tell me what the modulus operator does? Chani? Exactly. So it's remainder. Can anyone tell me? So what would 42 modulus 7 give me? Yeah, you can just say that. 0. What would 0 modulus 3 give me?
Oh.
Okay, so now these are basically what are arithmetic operators, and can anyone tell me how would you use these arithmetic operators to calculate the average and assign it to a variable? The average of the 10 scores that you had before. Yeah?
Basically, parentheses score 1 plus all the way to score 10, and then parentheses, and then divide. And then forward slash divide, forward slash 10.
So, what type would I declare this as?
Double.
Okay, can anyone tell me why it's a double and not something else? Priyanka?
It has to be an integer.
That's
If it's not double, then it has to be an integer.
Why are we using a double in this case?
So that it's not an integer.
So that's what's not in it.
The average.
Okay, so basically we have double scores over here. So if you actually try and name it int, and now we can just name the variable average. If you try to declare this an int, okay, now let's type in.
This is 11.
Okay, so after I add all of them up, what do I do?
Divided by 10.
Yeah, this 10 scores. Now I declared it as an int, and see what Eclipse says. Eclipse is going to tell you add cast to int, or change type of average to double. So whenever you have an error, Eclipse will usually suggest something that would fix the error. So converting this to double would make sense, but basically the reason that this error exists is because you're trying to, when you add together multiple double values and then you divide them, you're basically, what's happening is that the number that you're going to get is a double, and you're trying to assign a double that is a decimal, and you're trying to fit a decimal into an integer. So the computer doesn't like that because it can't take a decimal value and try and call it an integer and fit it in a slot designed for an integer. So one thing you could do is you could just change the type of double, type of average to double, and then that would work. Or you could do what's the other thing that Eclipse suggests? And it suggests add cast to int. Can anyone tell me what a cast is? Yeah.
So is that guess is where you change the type of, you convert from one type to another type?
Exactly. So if I allow it to add the cast to int, what it basically does here is it puts that extra int in parentheses and it before my entire value. So what it's doing over here is it's taking, this is my calculation for the average, it's taking the result of this calculation and it's converting it to an integer. But now, try doing this, do it this way, and then print out your result and see what you get. Can someone tell me what they get? Yeah?
80.
Tell me the exact output with decimal points. Say that
Oh,
again?
exactly. But without the typecast?
No, with the typecast.
Yeah,
80. 80.
Yeah.
There's no dot. 80.
You sent it to me.
Right. Okay, I'm just making sure. Yeah. Hold on. Okay, so you set it to an int. So now it's going to give you 80. Now, that's because you changed it to an int. So what it does when you do that kind of thing is it takes whatever number you got here. Now, I don't know what the calculation for that is. But say if it was 80.25, then what it does is, what would you do in math if you got this kind of number and you had to convert it to an integer? What would your math teacher expect of you? Round it. Exactly. So if you say you had 80.57, you would round that to 81, right? Because 0.5 gets converted up.
The answer is 80.52, so shouldn't it round up instead of down?
That's what I'm explaining right now. Okay, so what you would usually do is you would round up if there was, so he told me just now that the actual value is 5.2, great at calculation. But, so what you would usually do is you would round it up and you would make it 81, but that's not what the computer does, because if I round this, you see I get 80, because what the computer does is it truncates. And truncation is basically when it chops off whatever's after the decimal point. It doesn't care if it's a 0.99999, it's not going to round. Well, there is a way for you to tell the computer to round, but you don't have to worry about that right now. Basically, when you don't specify that you want it to be rounded, it truncates it. So it just chops off whatever's after the decimal point, and it's just going to give you an 80. Okay, now, Does that make sense? Does anyone have any questions about that? Yeah.
I got an 80.0.
Did you declare it as a double or as a
I put
double?
a double.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be in.
So we'll do it with a double and we'll show you what happens then too. But if you put it in as int, it's going to print 80. Okay, now declare as a double.
Int double.
Oh, of course. Change it to double and then remove the int typecast and see what it does. Okay, what did you get as your result?
80.5290000000001.
Yeah, so we did much. Okay, I got a different one. Yeah, okay. So there must be some discrepancy over there. But basically, this is going to give you the double value. And now I want you to try something else. So like I said, truncation. So what do you think I'm going to get if I say system out times? And I said, what's that going to give me? So when I declare something as 3, and I don't put a .0 after it, the computer assumes that it's an int. So 3 is assumed to be an int here. And 2 is also assumed to be an int because there's no decimal points placed after it.
Maybe 1.
So what would the result of that be?
1.
You think it would be 1?
Well, it chops off.
Okay, exactly. So I was going to ask you to explain what's so it's going to truncate it and then it gives you 1. So how would you now try and cast it? How would you cast that so that it's a double? I think you know the right way of doing it. I want someone to tell me the wrong way of doing it. Okay, so one way of typecasting it is you could just stick a double over there, right? And then, can someone tell me what that would print? Okay, you think it would print 1.5. It's actually going to print 1.0. Can someone explain to me why that's going to happen? Yeah.
So what you're doing is you're typecasting it after it completes the calculation in the int format. So instead of typecasting each number itself inside the calculation before you do it.
Exactly. So what he said is correct because I put a parentheses around the 3 over 2 over here. First it calculates these two using integer values. It takes that as an integer and as an integer. An integer divided by integer is equal to integer. So it calculates that as 1.5 and it truncates it so it makes it equal to 1. And then when you typecast that as a double, all it does is it adds a 0.0 at the end of it. So can someone tell me how I could do this to get the right answer? Anybody else? Okay, yeah.
Okay, that's a double. So you typecast the 3 and then you typecast the 2 and then you divide the 2.
Okay. So that's one way of doing it. Oh, of course. And the typecast always goes with 4. Okay, tell me what answer you get with this. There's an easier way of doing it, but yeah, you should get 1.5. Okay. Does everyone get 1.5? And do you get the difference between typecasting it after it's completed the operation versus typecasting it while it's doing the operation? So 3 over 2 and then typecasting it versus does everybody understand that? Okay, now an easier way of doing it is you can actually leave out the second double. And you're going to get the same answer because a double, an operation between a double and an int is going to give you a double. So you could do double multiplied by int, your result is going to be double. Double divided by int, your result is going to be double. Same with addition, same with subtraction. So a double and an int are going to give you a double. What are an int and an int going to give you? Exactly. What is double and double going to give you? Exactly. So you can do it this way too, because then you've converted 3 into a double, and then you're dividing it by 2. So yeah.
If you did 3.0 divided by 2.0, you recognize that it's doubles, right?
Yes. So
Good question. So if you did 3.0 divided by 2.0, and you took out the typecast altogether,
it will give you 1.5 because it recognizes both of them as doubles, so then it does double division.
What about just leaving out the zeros, just having that self one?
Yay, thank you, Brian. You contributed. So just putting a decimal point there also establishes it as a double. Does anyone have any questions about that? About typecasting? Okay. So can someone try a modulus using doubles and tell me what happens? So do 3 modulus 2. So you would expect 1, right? But do 3.0 modulus 2.0.
You get 1.0.
Okay, you get 1.0. Now try 3.2 divided by 2.0. You still get an answer. Now take out the 0.0 and see what you get. One second, I'm trying to think. Okay, so that's kind of contrary to what you would expect when you're doing remainder operations, because a lot of people would expect that remainder operations only work with integers, but as you can see here, they also work with decimals. So, does everybody understand the rest of the arithmetic operators we went over? Plus, minus, multiply, divide, modulus, it's the same as regular math. What we need to talk about is order of operations. So, let's do a couple of order of operations problems. So the way that order of operations in Java works is that first it tackles the multiplicative operators. So it'll tackle these, which it considers multiplicative, and then it'll tackle plus and minus. So can everybody actually, I don't want you to use your computers for this, but tell me what this would give you. So it tackles all of these at the same level, and then these are the same level. And once, if everything is at one level, then it just goes left to right. Okay, how about everybody take a moment to think about it, come up with your answer, and then talk about it. Just give me a thumbs up once you have an answer. Don't put it into the computer and print your result. Okay, do you want to just say out your answer?
8.0.
What else did people get?
9.0.
Okay, yeah, it's 9.0. I think just a math error. So how it would go, because this is all at the same level of precedence, it would first do this. So what's 4.0 divided by 2? What is it? 2.0. Don't forget the 0.0. Because double int. Multiplied by 9. What's that? 18.0. Don't forget the 0.0. They ask these questions on APCS, and some of the options will be the same, but just in integer and decimal form, so you have to know when the 0.0 is there or not. And then 9.0. Okay, now let's try something with multiple levels of precedence. Come up with an answer, and then we'll talk about it. Give me operation within the brackets?
6.0.
6.0. Okay, so now you have 27 over 2 multiplied by 6 minus 8 over 3. What would you do now? What's the next level of precedence after the brackets? Division, multiplication, modulus. So, can someone tell me what you would do next?
27 divided.
Okay, so you would do 27 divided by 2. What's 27 divided by 2?
13.
Not 13.5, because it's integer, integer. So 13. Yeah. Divided by 2.0.
But what's the point?
And what can you do over here? So, because this is a separate set of precedents, and this is another set of precedents, and it's separated by a negative sign, which is, it's like at the next order of operations. So you can also evaluate this simultaneously as long as you leave both of these sides of the negative sign separate. So what would this evaluate to? Okay. What next?
13 divided by 2.
What's 13 divided by 2.0? Yeah, 6.5, because it's a double. Can someone tell me what this is?
39 minus 2.
And now you're down to just the negative sign, so that's the last level of precedence. And is it 0.0? Okay. So there you go. So you have to be very careful at all levels that you're not forgetting the 0.0 for where it's double and int. You have to know where to keep it just an integer because it's int divided by int or int multiplied by int. And just be really careful of the order that you do things in, because these are really easy to mess up in the heat of the AP test. We'll post a couple more challenging ones online for you to mess around with, and after you're done with it, you can check your answer using a computer. So you could just put that entire statement within a print statement and see what it gives you to check your answer, but try and evaluate it by hand. So now we'll talk about some things that you can put inside a print statement, and we'll see what it evaluates to. So in the past, we talked about concatenation, which is basically where you have a print statement, and you have, say, A plus B plus some string. So concatenation is basically the process of stringing together these multiple parts into one thing that will print on a single line. So in a concatenation, Java allows you to concatenate together numbers and strings. Can someone tell me what a string is? Yeah?
It's like a word or like a bunch of letters put together.
Exactly. So a string can be any string of characters, like any sequence of characters, and the one thing that defines a string is that it's enclosed in quotes. So, just to review from the previous class. So, let's go through some string concatenation problems. So, what is this going to evaluate? So let's walk through this problem step by step. So it starts, because it's all pluses, it's going to start from the left because they're all the same level of precedence. So it'll start from the left and go to the right. So first it sees a 2 plus 3. What are both of those values? So what is it going to give me? So it has a 5 plus all of that. Now it sees a 5 plus string hello. What is it going to do? Say that again?
Print hello.
Well, so we're talking about how it evaluates the whole thing. So how is it next going to evaluate? Like, what's its next step? What is it going to get out of these two? That operation over there. Yeah.
5 hello.
Okay, exactly. So there's a space over there. I put in a space, but I don't know how to do. Okay, so 5 hello plus 7 plus 6. This is not evaluated yet. Just, yeah, so this is what it's evaluated. Now, what has this become? I've done something wrong over here. Yeah, exactly. So it's taken an integer, it's converted it to a string, and it's added it to a string. So So now this result that you get over here is also a string. So now it's created a string out of this. So it's going to take that string and it's going to add it to the next value. And that next value is an integer. And when it tries to add together a string and an integer, it converts the integer to a string. So what is it going to give me now? Okay, yeah. So it's going to give me a string that says 5, hello, 7. And now it still has to evaluate the plus 6. Now what is it going to do? Exactly. So it's just going to add that 6 over there. So as you can see, it's important to go step by step because a lot of you, if you eyeball this problem, you would have instantly added those 5s. You would have made that a 13, and you would probably have come up with 5, hello, 13, which is actually incorrect. They'll give you this kind of thing on an AP test, and they'll ask you what it's going to print, and it's important for you to go proceed using order of operations so that the final answer that you get is actually what's going to print. Yeah.
So everyone understands how, or like why we're able to add integers and strings, right? Is everyone good on that? Basically, Java just automatically, like if you're adding a string and an integer, Java just automatically converts the integer to a string.
So integer plus string gives you a final string. Any questions on this? Kind of funky.
Wait,
Yeah.
so it's 5 hello 13, not 5 hello 7. 6.
No, I'm saying this is
Oh, okay. One.
this is what a lot of people might have eyeballed into. That's incorrect. So the actual answer is 5 hello 7 6. Okay, now what would have happened if the statement instead had parentheses? What would it print? Yeah, 5 hello 13, because it would evaluate both of these, it would evaluate both of these first, because they're in brackets, so they have precedence. Let's do something more complicated. This will be the last one, and then we'll post a bunch online for you to look at. That's a string with a full stop, with a period, sorry. -3 plus 10 plus 11. Okay, can anyone tell me what's the first thing that'll happen? Just can anyone tell me what's the first thing that it's going to evaluate here? Yeah.
4 plus 1. Oh, no, -3 plus 10.
Okay, exactly, because that's within brackets. So 4 plus 1 plus 9 plus... What's -3 plus 10? 7. Yeah. What's it going to evaluate next? What's it going to evaluate next? Say that again?
11 divided by 3.
Exactly. So it's going to look, there's a lot of pluses, but there's also a multiplicative. What's 11 divided by 3? 3, because it's integers again. So it's not going to give you the double. What is it going to do now? Okay, so it's going to evaluate that to 5. What's it going to do next? So that's going to be 14. What's it going to do after that? So this is going to evaluate to 14. And what is it going to do? It's going to take the 14 and it's going to add it to that string. And like we talked about before, int plus string is going to give you string. So it's going to give you a string which has 14 dot. And then plus 7. So adding that 7 is just going to... So this 14 dot string is added to 7. String plus integer gives you string. And then again, this is going to be a string. And string plus the integer 3 is also going to give you a string, and it's simply going to add that 3 over there. Yeah?
The AP test, you need to put in quotations, right, to make sure that
Yes, yes, always quotations. They're not, for this kind of a problem, you'll never be asked to show all your steps of work. You'll just be asked for the final answer. So this is going to be one of the multiple choice type problems. The only free response are actual complete programs. Okay, any questions on operator precedence and when you concatenate that kind of precedence? Say that again? bring it down. So it's 11 divided by 3, which evaluates to 3.
Wonderful.
Right? You know that, Brian. You're a teenager. Okay, so that's all we have for today. We'll post a couple of practice problems online.